Good. Good. Let's get our audio figured out. Test, test. Can you hear me all right?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're very faint though. And
Hmm.
I can't, your image is static. And just give it a minute to connect. I can, you're moving more now.
Oh yeah, I move okay.
Yeah, yeah. Check and see if you're covering your mic or something with your
I wouldn't be. I'm definitely not.
let me make sure I have my volume turned up all the way.
I hope you can hear me on the recording.
Well, I'm assuming that the recording is going to be just like this, so make a point to like speak up and speak in there right there.
I'll try to enunciate.
You're sounding better. You're sounding better right there. So you entered the weight over bar at 16 feet.
Yes, I did.
You made your first attempt at 16, and who were you looking at when you made that 16-foot? When you decided to enter at 16, why'd you enter at 16, not 15, not 17?
I don't really pay attention to what other athletes are doing. I have a pretty good idea when I'm going in, what I'm going to start at in the height events anyway. 16 just seemed like the number that was reasonable for me. I very nearly went 19 at the Alaska Games early in the season. I'm quite a bit stronger than I was at that point, so I felt like I was pretty confident I would at least go 18, maybe 19. And so 16 felt like a reasonable starting height for me, 2 to 3 heights under where I would like to get to by the end. Just seemed like 16 was where to go.
Okay, when you were telling that story, like your sound was kind of coming in and out. So are you touching or moving something as you're talking or something like that?
I'm not. I'm definitely not.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, we'll see what it is. I hope I can just hear you on this end right here. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Okay. All right. You made your first attempt at 17, and for what it's worth, Matt Doherty also made his first attempt, and Nick misses, but he made it on his second attempt.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So going into 18 feet, it was just you three guys, 1, 2, and 3, Matt, Nick, and Scott Farr. And do you remember so you made 18 on your second attempt,
Mm-hmm.
and Nick made it on his first.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of an interesting, like as far as countbacks, that kind of flipped the tables because
yep.
you were quote unquote ahead of him on the 17.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But then on the 18, it kind of flipped back to him on countbacks.
Right.
Doherty misses all of his attempts at 18.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on countbacks, you're going into the final height, you and Nick. And you guys, what height do you guys choose at after 18?
Well, it actually 18
Oh, go ahead.
to 19 next.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at you're right.
To 19, and at that point it was a choice because there was two of us left.
Yeah.
Which is where, okay, it's up to the last two athletes to then determine where they want to jump. Before that point, it's 1 foot per round. Everybody knows that, I guess. I don't need to explain that. But in any case, Nick and I chose to go to 19, and we both cleared it. I don't remember which attempts either of us cleared it on, though.
I think you guys both cleared them on your first attempt.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I can't remember any misses anyway. But then we decided to go to 20-foot one because Nick holds the record at 20-foot even, and neither of us were eligible for the record, but we figured, still no reason not to try to best it. So we went for 20-foot one, and I think I got it on my second attempt. I think I tried to crank on it a little bit too much on the first one, and the second one is when I kind of just relaxed and put it together, and it happened.
Yeah, you guys were being pressured under a gun for time and daylight.
We were.
So
yes.
When you two guys were going, just you two, you were taking your attempts. I was looking through them. You were taking your attempts pretty much every minute. You guys were just going back and forth. And Your second attempt was really your second. It was your third attempt when you got it. Let's let me. You know what I should have started doing here? I should have. I've been recording, but I wanted to share my screen because I want to play off the Instagram recording the your throw,
Okay, sure.
the 20-foot one you got on your third attempt right here. And right here. So it is at. So we are. It's dusk. So what I want to note about watching through these attempts right here. Can you see my? Can you see the screen? The throws.
Yeah. Yes.
What I noticed looking through these attempts right here is like you and Nick were just going back to back. You had less than a minute. Pretty much, you guys rested a minute or 90 seconds in between max effort attempts, and each of your attempts got closer. Like the first one, you went under. Second one, you nailed the bar hard, and then this is your third attempt right here.
Was this a 20-foot one or this was
Yeah.
19?
This is the 20-foot. This is the 20-foot one. Top four occasion. Peter Doyle. Boom. So you cleared that with how much do you think you cleared that by?
Oh, probably less than it looks like.
Less than it looks.
I think a lot of people tend to look at the center of mass on the implement and say, "Oh, you were 6-8 inches over the bar." But realistically, I mean, looking at the edge of the implement, I think maybe 3 inches. That's a pretty good angle there too. I think maybe it's not as deceiving as I suspect it is, but
Yeah.
a lot of the angles, especially as you get to high heights, they can really make it look like the implement is a little bit higher over the bar than you think it is. But I bet I was good for about 3 inches more, maybe 4, maybe 26 if I really caught a good one. Like this one, I guess. If I caught this one again, maybe 20-foot 6.
Yeah. No, I mean, you cleared it with you didn't touch the bar at all. That's for sure. So you definitely cleared it. But I think that's a good point about the center of mass you make right there. Whether you clear it with the implement, say upside down or right side up, where that handle is. Is that kind of what you're thinking or commenting on?
Yeah, that I think people just try to. I mean, they want to be optimistic about it.
Yeah.
They want to give you a good number, so they're looking for the very center of the object and where it sits over maybe even the bottom of the bar. Maybe they're being generous, thinking that they're going to bend the bar or something. I don't know. That bar definitely wouldn't. Poor Willis Graves.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
That bar wouldn't have bent no matter what. Poor Willis Graves. I don't know if you remember his.
Yeah. He had you're right. He had one that was it was a tightrope walker. It was a solid breath.
I've never seen that before. That was pretty incredible. It sucks. I mean, he threw that. I mean, it might as well have been a good throw. It just came down on the wrong side. It was a very strange thing to witness.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, right there. So
the tide, something screwed him up there.
So what were you thinking? After you got that, so you made that. Nick still had an attempt to go, but he ended up pushing. I think it was in front. Didn't happen. Didn't happen right there. What were you thinking? Lining up for that throw. What were you trying to focus on or not think about for that final throw?
Yeah, I was just trying to be long and patient. I have a tendency to get really aggressive in WOB. It seems like kind of just a big caveman event where you just beat your head against the wall and then stand up as hard as you can. And that there's not a ton of inaccuracy there. It is very much probably the most simple event we throw in the Highland Games, and it very much is just find a low point and stand up as hard as you can. But I think because of the aggression that comes naturally to people because it's such a simple event, they think they can kind of get away with just blowing everything out of the water and just screaming through the throw. And there really is an aspect of patience, especially waiting for that low point to make it between, at least the midpoint of the foot. I think people tend to pull or stand up rather when the weight is just catching maybe the heel, and it ends up really kind of neutering their triple extension. They can't really get their hips back behind their heels and extend all the way up and back. They really kind of short how much their hips are going to be able to effectively come through by not being patient and waiting for that weight to get out to about the midfoot or between the toes.
So that a lot of good stuff in what you just said there, Scott. And just to kind of back up a little bit, like that low point. You mentioned staying long, finding your low point, uh, finding your low point. When you're feeling your low point on your the weight, say by your heels, are you feeling that low point in your hips, in your knees, on the midfoot? How do you know you're finding your low point when you're
Um,
warming up or practicing for WOB? Yeah.
yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I probably do get a little bit of feedback in my feet. I can probably feel the weight shift into my feet, into like more the balls of my feet, away from the heels of my feet. I'm not sure that it's something that I've really thought about a ton, or well, I'm certain it's not something I've thought about a ton, or something that I've really could identify just by thinking about it and trying to remember. But I suspect it is something a little bit about the feedback from the feet. But also, I try to, I call it like extending my proprioception. I want to be able to feel the implement in space, and I want to feel where that is in space. I don't want to feel like I live in my own body. I kind of want to live in the implement a little bit so I can kind of, I don't know if there's a ton of science to that, but feel the implement make its way to the low point instead of feeling my body find a position and hope that the implement kept it. If that makes any sense. Kind of like, if I'm backing up my car, I can kind of feel where the rear bumper is. I can't literally feel it, but
Yeah.
I have a pretty good sense of where that is in space. But I don't know if it's extending my proprioception, but that's kind of how I've thought of it as extension of that proprioception and understanding where something is in space in relation to yourself because of your kinetic connection to it. If that makes any sense, that might be totally wrong scientifically, but that's
No,
the best
I like
explanation of the way that I'm feeling it.
I like that what you're talking about, the bringing up the proprioception, like feeling it out there. And when you were talking about that, the weight is in your hand and it's extended out of the hand, like it's outside of your hand. The weight is right there, as opposed to like the stone where it's like on you, like it's right there, right there. So feeling that, and that's got to tie in with like the long arms and the patience. Like you find the low point with the patience there. You hook grip?
I do, yes, I do.
You
I
do,
didn't
and
know
that's
it.
what, yeah.
Feel like moving to the hook grip, I did not see an immediate benefit from it. I actually saw more of a benefit when I rolled my thumb upward. So a lot of people kind of do knuckles
Show
up.
that on the camera. What do you mean roll the thumb?
A lot of people, when they're throwing, they want their knuckles, like these knuckles, facing up, coming away from their hips. I like to have my thumb up. So my thumb, the top of my thumb, if it wasn't a hook, would be
Yeah.
facing up away from my hips. I feel like that's where I created a lot of length. I don't know if it's, just putting the bicep in a longer position or whatever, but it allows me to feel like I can create more length. Um, and I don't think I could do that grip without the hook grip. I think because I was hook gripping when I did the knuckle up, or rather switch to the knuckle up, it was easy for me to go to the thumb up style and hold on to that hook grip that I had and actually get some benefit from it because I don't feel like I would be able to successfully do that thumb up style grip without the hook grip. I feel like I would be blowing out of the handle every other throw.
Yeah. That thumb going back, Carl Gerke he told me about that. I think like San Diego game, something like that. He gave me now with that idea there, it's imagine the bar. What I'm asking about this question is about the wrist angle upon release, or at least when it's coming on the up. So coming up and then it kind of turns. Are you trying to get your wrist out? Are you still trying to keep like a strong neutral wrist, or kind of even kicking it back, or any thought about that at all?
I can't say I've had any thought about it at all. I
Okay.
think probably in a similar way that you would want to think about your arms and hammer. Like they're not going to be loosey goosey. They're still maintaining tension, but they're not something that's bending and creating the forces. They're more of just like a rope attaching your trunk to the implement.
Yeah,
They're not, the part that's actually trying to drive the movement. Um, so, I feel like maybe there's something to that. Like the wrist is maybe just not something that I feel like is a big driver to the movement. So it's
sure.
probably maintain tension, but I'm not at all thinking about where I'm pushing my wrist or pulling my wrist. I think it's probably just something to answer your question. I guess it probably maintains like a neutral, um,
Yeah.
arrangement there, and just tries to maintain tension there more than flexing or extending or anything like that.
So going into high wob, when the bar gets high up there, we're thinking about patience and long arms. Where are you focusing your aggression on your body, in your mind? How are you making that line between your caveman mind and your modern mind?
Yeah, yeah. It really was just as I'm approaching the implement, just telling myself if I pull early, there's no chance. It doesn't matter how hard I pull. I'm going to either shank it or I'm going to short my hip. Whatever I do, pulling early is not going to make this height. So I had to just kind of calm myself down and almost be, unaggressive about it, and more like an assertive pull than an aggressive pull.
Assertive.
There was certainly, effort there, but it's not like a nose in the smelling salts, slapping on the back kind of an effort. It was more just a relaxed, you know, find your position and then stand up as hard as you can. And that's exactly what it was. It was just find that low point specifically and get my hips under my shoulders and then stand up as hard as I could without, any salts or, any kind of external stimulus that's going to get me really amped up. Just what I was able to generate in the moment of the throw. I didn't actively try to amp myself up or anything before the throw. Just clear head, find my low point, and then find the assertive aggressiveness in standing up. Nothing before that point, I guess.
You stand up. So with the stand up cue and hips under the shoulders on your wob, you're setting up. I'm just going to say you set up. I'd say you set up like 8, 10 feet away from the standards, and a lot of your wob reminded me of like a backward shot put toss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it'd be nice if there was a pit behind you to fall back into,
Right.
get yourself. So you're standing up tall, but you're coming back as well with that right there, that release right there. So how do you figure out your distance from the standards?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's something I kind of dial in every time I throw wob. It's something I kind of learned watching Mike Zolkowicz throw a lot of wob. He stands quite far out from the bar and really throws himself back. He gets his shoulders and hips behind his heels as he's hitting that triple extension, so he can really drive upward as well as backward as well as upward, and it gives it some carry as it makes it over the bar. Which is a lot easier to clear heights with. It is so much easier to clear the height one time and not have to worry about it coming back down and having to clear it again. With a very upright throw, you tend to see people leave it out front or shank it just behind the bar, come creaming right up under the bar. You never see that with somebody that has a really wide arc, except maybe on their top end throws, right? Their PR attempts. But otherwise, they're pretty good at just getting it over, especially at opening heights, getting it over and peaking. Who knows where the hell, right? And from there, that opening height is more of a calibrator than anything. You can say, okay, I'm peaking 2 feet behind the bar. I need to step forward 2 feet, or I peaked way in front of the bar, and it nearly hit the bar on its way back down. So I need to back myself back up into the standards. So I kind of do it for two reasons. A, to calibrate my high point, or sorry, my peaking point, and B, to kind of make it so it's just easy clears on those low heights. So I'm not losing points on countbacks. I'm not taking third attempts at low heights and, messing with my own head. It's an easy way, almost like a safety throw, or, like a one
yeah.
turn and a heavy distance that you're fouling out of, or something like that. It's the smart move to do at those kind of heights that are heights that you're going to be clear over, but you're
Did
concerned
you
about.
feel after you made 19 on your first attempt? Did you feel pretty dialed in?
Yeah,
Like
I would say
from
I think I my first attempt at 16, I was certainly well out in front of the bar, and I needed to be because I really sailed it behind me. And I kind of adjusted. I didn't throw my shoulders quite far as back as I did on that first one for the rest of the throws, so I was able to kind of dial myself back closer to the standards. And from there, I think 18 and 19, I just had the people on the sideline, some of the other competitors. My wife was out there, and they could kind of dial me in and say, okay, you're just a little bit behind, or you're just a little bit in front of. And I honestly can't remember where I was
Yeah.
for 17,
When
18, 19, but they pretty much dialed me into where I could stay relatively close to the standard and get pretty much a perfect peak on that 20-foot throw that I had.
So when you're dialing in and what's really great about Highland Games is we have, it's a great crowd to throw in. And even during the middle of competition, you can get tips from the guy you're chasing or the guy who's chasing you. So speak right there. So when you're taking this feedback from athletes like that, so people are commenting on your high point, telling you when to dial in. Are you taking in feedback about your low point? Are you trusting your gut? Because your high point and your low point are, connected. They're in a connected chain right there. So I can easily see anybody's high point, whether it's front or behind the bar. But dialing in those two at those crucial moments when you got to make it on your first attempt.
Right.
What do you think? What are you thinking about when you get the feedback to dial in your high point and your low point?
Yeah.
Your peak and your low point.
Mostly it's clarification, or giving me a more accurate understanding of where I was, because a lot of the time I'll know, like, okay, I pulled a little early, which means my high point is going to be closer to in front of the bar.
Yeah.
Or I pulled late, and I threw my shoulders back, and it was just a real wonky throw, and it's going to be sailing behind me. There's certain things that I inherently understand which direction it's going to be going, but maybe not by how much. Or and maybe it's not something that I want to change. Maybe it's just something that I maybe exaggerated a little bit, but I'm kind of leaning into that deliberately or something. And so I know it's going to be sailing behind me a little bit. Like, for example, that first throw I had at 16, I knew deliberately very much that I'd be sailing it quite a bit further behind me. So I know it's going to be peaking behind me, but I don't know how far it actually did peak behind me. So I'm going to go to my competitors, or buddies out on the field, or whoever, and say, hey, how far behind was I, or where did that peak? Knowing full well that I peaked behind the bar, or
Yeah.
very very rear behind me, but they can maybe tell me, oh, you were like 18 inches behind the bar, or you were
Or
way
close, yeah.
far. And they can kind of clarify for me and give me a little bit better idea of just how far behind the bar I am. So, I certainly do trust my gut. I certainly do feel, during the throw, which direction this is going to go. And I can, make adjustments a little bit regarding my own gut feelings, but it's always helpful to have somebody, another set of eyes that can tell you, uh, A, yes, you were correct. It went the direction you suspected. And B, by this much. So you can refine, the response that you're going to make to that timing or whatever it was.
Yeah. So when you made the last throw, the 20-foot one, how do you keep your adrenaline up? Because Nick did have another attempt left. There could have been an opportunity to keep it up, but very few of us throw throw numbers that are close to world records. What do you think, even though you made a height and it's the last one, what are you thinking what are you thinking to yourself? Or go ahead.
Yeah, it was the end of the day. I guess what you're saying, before Nick took his third attempt, before I knew.
Before he took his third attempt.
Yeah, honestly, it's not something that's difficult for me to stay amped up and keep my head in the competition. I guess I knew if Nick made it, all it was gonna do was light a fire for me. If he didn't make it, I won. If he did, there's that adrenaline you're asking for. It's not something I've ever had to really actively try to turn on. A lot of people talk about flipping the switch and finding that go juice, and there certainly is an activity, or an actively addressed or sought out intensity. But it's not something that, like, I've had to practice or have like tips on how to make it happen. It's just been relatively easy for me inherently to be able to say, okay, it's go time. Let's get it done.
How many games do you think it took you? You started, I believe you probably, I'm sure you started throwing in high school, probably your freshman year.
Mhm.
So, was this something that it took? Is it just speaking of Highland games? How many games do you think it would take somebody, or it took you, to kind of be able to know, to kind of take care of that, or know that you can turn it on or turn it off?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I think I don't know that that's as any different from saying like how many training sessions do you think it's going to take any given person to deadlift 500 pounds? Like, is the person 150 pounds soaking wet? Is the person a male or a female? Is the person, an active, already relatively healthy, physically fit person, or is this somebody who's untrained and 35 years on the couch? There's
Yeah.
a ton of things that could influence where their starting point is. And what kind of progress they make, and where their ceiling is, how you know far they're actually going to be able to continue to progress before they're just kind of at that asymptote of there's just not going to be a whole lot more progress because of just the way that you are, whether it's your genetics or your personality or any other given thing that could influence that. There's a lot, I'm sure.
Are you train with the 56 much? Because this is a 42 weight. This is a 42-pound weight. So coming into this, did you train with the 56?
Not really, no. In fact, I barely trained with the 42 this
Okay.
year. A ton of underweight implement stuff, 28 and 25-pound weight stuff. Uh, I'm a big fan
For
of doing.
WOB?
Well, I guess not for the WOB. With the WOB, I didn't really train WOB at all, to be perfectly honest. I did maybe 3 practices of WOB total this year. I did WOB swings in the gym as a resistance modality. I guess a little bit different than a kettlebell swing. I don't want to call it a kettlebell swing because all the kettlebell people will make fun of me, and they'd be right to, because a little bit different. But more or less a kettlebell swing, but with the WOB kind of swing pattern. I did a lot of those in the gym.
So
Realistically,
with that,
my WOB was pretty much squats and WOB swings.
squats and ones. So talk about that WOB swing. Like, I can imagine, say, like the movement of I mean, you're doing it with a kettlebell or a 50 or whatever in the gym. So that WOB swing, what you're doing, I can imagine like the movement of the weight below the waist. You're kind of just making it feel like that. But with that WOB swing in the gym, are you pulling that weight up at all? I'm assuming you're not. I'm assuming you're not releasing it because you're inside,
Yeah, just
right?
like where you would pull a kettlebell for a normal kettlebell swing, just maybe a little under shoulder height, maybe sternum height is all I'm pulling it to.
Try to get it a pop.
Yeah, just a little pop at the top, but yeah, and very much just waiting for the low point. For me, this is a lot more about a rhythm thing than kind of a resistance based thing. If I want to train those wob muscles to really fire, I'm gonna do cleans. I'm gonna do snatches. I'm gonna load the shit out of it and go that way. But if I want to train the timing and the rhythm of it, I'm gonna do repeat reps on swings to really just wait for that low point before I stand up. So there's certainly a little bit of a pop, but it's definitely not a big aggressive, crank on this weight. I wouldn't do this with tons and tons of weight either. I think this is something maybe around your competition weight, maybe a little bit heavier for some conditioning, just to really focus on finding that low point and standing up with your hips under your shoulders from that low point. I think a lot of people tend to keep the hips pitched way back. They're in more of like a conventional deadlift stance, and then they throw the hips through, and they finish in a very triple extended position, but they weren't stacked at all through that movement. None of the force that they're transferring is traveling directly up that stacked spine. It's instead kind of, being over this flexed spine that's going to, act as a little bit of a shock absorber. So getting the hips under the shoulders in more of like a front squat position, standing up from there is really, really critical. So in that wob swing, the way that I think about it is on the way in, I'm going in high and out low. So on the way in, it's more like a Romanian deadlift, or the eccentric of the Romanian deadlift. I'm pitching the hips up and back. I guess you don't go up in the Romanian deadlift, but I want my hips to rise up and pitch back on straight legs. And then from that rear point that I find where I found basically my stretching limit, I'm going to drop my hips and push the weight to a low point. Instead of just waiting for it or swinging straight back out the way I came, I want the weight to travel out low. So I'm going to drop my hips and push to this, basically the whole of a front squat. And from there, stand straight up. So it looks very different on the way out than it does on the way in, because that's how we do the
Now,
wob.
I'm glad
Want
you.
your reflect that.
Yeah, no, that's good because I wanted to ask because you mentioned that a few times. You used the phrasing, I think, a couple of different times, and I want to definitely you expand on that. You mentioned a few times shoulders over the hips. You mentioned stacked. You mentioned front squat, and you mentioned that right there. So your torso angle. You also contrasted that with the conventional deadlift. People, when you're low point, like this is meant to represent kind of your torso, like the hips and the shoulders, if I understand you. And the legs aren't shown on here, but they're down here. There's a little bend, and the weight is in between at its low point, and it is that drive up vertical. That's stacked. Is that fair to say? When you use those phrases, shoulders over the hips, stacked, front squat, you're trying to get a torso angle in your athlete like this.
Correct. That's exactly what I'm referring to. And another one of my cues that I've come up with that, or for that, rather, is treating your upper body like a bucket full of water, like your torso is a bucket full of water. And when you're looking for that stacked position, you want to make sure that all the water in the bucket stays in the bucket. Like the lid is off, it's full, and you're trying to maintain as much of the water there as possible. Obviously, there's moments in certain throws where you don't want to stay perfectly upright and stacked, like a glide and a shot put or something like that. But for the most part, we want to stay stacked a lot of the time in the throws. And while you're in that, stay stacked modality, you want to treat it just like a full bucket, and none of the water is spilling on any which direction. And that's what I'm trying to find when I find that low point of the weight of the bar. Is my bucket is now full, and I need to keep it full as I stand up.
That is anything else you want to talk about training wob or throwing for wob? Scott, that's kind of like that's a lot. I wanted to anything else on your mind about wob or frustrations or happiness you have with wob? Congratulations on 20'1", man.
Hey, thank you. No, wob it's a pretty straightforward and simple event. And I don't really know that there are a ton of tricks or tips. As long as you get your hips under you, stand up. It's just a matter of getting stronger hips, getting stronger legs. It's the strength event. It is the one event that's just kind of a display of how strong your hips are. Period. End of story. So that's where you get better at WOD. You get stronger. You find that timing. That's all you really can do.
Yeah. Man, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate your time. I'd love to talk with you again, maybe about another throw or another event. Whenever you got time or something like that. But I just that's great, man. I really appreciate it. I really hope the audio comes through. You kind of wavered in and out, but I really hope the audio comes through. I also recorded the transcript, so get that going on there.
Perfect.
Hey, man, Scott, you have a great now. Do you want to see any of this? For what I plan on posting is I probably will. I do plan on posting this. It's probably not a surprise to you because I told you I'm recording it. But I was going to try to post chunks of it and then post the whole thing. Do you want to? I mean, none of us cussed or anything. Do you want to review it or see anything before I post it?
Sure. I mean, if you want to send me just the raw footage, I'd love to watch it and show my wife or something.
Oh, definitely. I can send you the link right now and just download it and stuff like that. But if I post anything, I'll tag you on it. I'll probably post it on. I'll post it on Instagram and Facebook. No, I'm sorry, YouTube.
Yeah, and on you doing that, so I didn't say anything I didn't want out on the on the socials anyway. So
yeah, that's
good.
Hey, man, you have a great day, Scott. Great meeting you, man. I had a great time, dude. Good luck, dude. I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thank you, man. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.